Hello everyone, good afternoon and a very warm welcome to today's webinar all about the year-end process in Sage 50 P11D. My name's Duncan, I'm your host and presenter, and I am joined today by my colleague Louise, who is our resident expert in all things Sage 50 P11D. And Louise will be on hand to answer your questions, which you'll be able to submit during the webinar. Let's now take a look at what we'll cover in the webinar. So we'll kick things off with an introduction to reporting expenses and benefits and a timeline of P11D key dates and deadlines. We'll then move into the practical side of things, explaining how to install your P11D update. So I'll provide some top tips on installing version 29, and I'll mention some of the changes in the new software. We'll then take a quick look at entering benefit records in Sage 50 P11D, and also how to import information from Sage Payroll as a quicker way of keeping things up to date. And then we'll move on to the year-end process, taking you through some preparation steps, and then producing your P11D and employer declarations and submitting that return online to HMRC. So plenty to pack in the webinar today. So let's get straight on to our introduction, and we'll talk briefly about reporting taxable expenses and benefits. So there are currently two ways that you can do this. The one that we're going to cover today is all done at the end of the tax year. So this is your P11D process, where you will be submitting a P11D form for each employee who you provided with taxable expenses and benefits in the previous tax year. So that's the tax year that ended on the 5th of April 2024. You would also need to submit an employer declaration known as a P11D-B, which will report the Class 1A employer national insurance that you owe on those benefits. And you'll need to provide a copy of the P11D to your employees, which you'll be able to do either via a printed copy or an emailed version in your Sage 50 P11D software. So that is an annual return, and it's all done after the end of the tax year. Now, the other option is reporting the expenses and benefits during the tax year in real time. And this is a process known as payrolling. So this involves processing a payment through your payroll. So it's a benefit in kind pay element. It's a notional payment, which will deduct the tax due on the benefit without actually paying the benefit amount. It means that a P11D would not be required at the end of the year, but you would still need to do a P11D-B employer declaration. But in order to payroll, you must have registered with HMRC to payroll your benefits by the start of the tax year, so before the 6th of April. So if you have not registered to payroll, you need to do a P11D for the expenses for this tax year. And that's something you'll be doing this time next year. Now, it's worth mentioning that you cannot payroll employer provided accommodation or beneficial loans. So those types of benefits always need to be done via the P11D process. And you can read more on reporting expenses and benefits from the gov.uk guidance, which also includes a handy link to an A to Z of different benefit types. And just to be clear, we are covering the P11D process in the webinar today. We will not be covering payrolling, and payroll benefits are not suitable really for using the P11D software. It's just for this P11D process. Now, on the subject of payrolling, if you're keeping up to date with the latest updates from HMRC, you may be aware that they are planning to mandate payrolling from April 2026. So the government have announced this with effect from the 6th of April 2026. Payrolling will be mandatory and the P11D annual return will be ended. The aim of this is to reduce administrative burdens on both HMRC and the employer by removing the need to submit a P11D at the end of each year. And there'll be draft legislation coming this year, and guidance will be produced in advance of that start date. But you can continue to P11D your expenses and benefits right up to and included benefits provided in tax year 25 to 26. And you can read more about those plans and that change in the latest employer bulletin, which I've linked to on the handout. So let's quickly run through some P11D key dates. So the first one on our timeline is the 5th of April. That was the last day of the tax year, and you will be reporting on the expenses and benefits provided for the tax year ending on the 5th of April. This year, we released our P11D update earlier than usual, so that has been available since the 8th of April, enabling you to install the latest legislation and get everything entered in plenty of time before the deadlines for the P11D return. So that deadline is the 6th of July. That is the date by which you must have submitted your P11D and your employer declaration to HMRC, and also the deadline to provide a copy of the P11D to the relevant employees. And then the other deadline, 22nd of July, is the payment deadline for the payment of the employer's Class 1A national insurance contributions. So that's the NI due on those benefits and paid by the employer. So that's your introduction to reporting expenses and benefits. But I'm now going to move on and talk about installing your P11D software update. So as you've just seen, that was released earlier this month, and it enables you to update your software with all of the latest legislation settings for the tax year just ended. And to help you with a smooth installation of the update, I'm just going to run you through some preparation steps. We'll let you know what to expect when you come to install, and then what you need to do to transfer any existing version 28 data into the latest version. So we're going to start with a bit of preparation. So these are some steps that you would do in version 28 of P11D. So first of all, you need to make a note of your serial number and activation key, as you will need to enter these details after you've installed version 29. You'll need to make a note of your data location, as you'll be able to browse to that location in order to transfer that data into version 29. We recommend that you run a compact and repair on your P11D database just to keep it in good condition, and also to ensure you have an up-to-date backup of your existing P11D data. Now, for those of you using the software for the very first time, you won't need to complete these steps. You'll be creating a database from scratch, and we will share some tips on getting you up and running a little bit later on. So I want to show you some of these steps in the program. So first of all, if I just switch the camera off and bring the slides down, I'm going to jump into P11D version 28. So this is last year's version. You can see the version number here at the top of the screen. And to find your serial number and activation key, all you would need to do is click onto Help and then click onto About. So when you do that, it will open up an About page. There'll be a serial number and an activation key unique to you, and you should make a note of those details so that you can enter them after you've installed version 29. So that's within Help and then About. Next step is to make a note of your data location. So you can find this in a couple of different places. It is displayed on the status bar at the bottom of the screen. So you can see my data location is this path just here. And that's actually the default data location for version 28, if you're just a single user on one PC. Or another place you can find this is if you go to File and then click Change Database Location, you'll see the existing path here. And what you could do is you could highlight that path and then right click and copy it. And then you could drop that into a notepad file or similar so that you know where that is, and you can copy that in to version 29 when you come to transfer your data. So I've got my serial number and key. I've made a note of the data location. So I'll just cancel out of that screen. The compact and repair, it's really simple to do. Just go to the File menu and then click Compact and Repair. You'll see this confirmation message telling you that it could take a minute or two. So we're going to click OK to that message, and then you just need to wait until you see this message to tell you that the operation has completed successfully. And your final preparation step is to take a backup of your P11D data. So that can be done from the File menu. If you click onto Backup, you would work through the Backup wizard, backing up your data files, and then you can browse to a suitable location for your backup. I'm just going to drop it on my desktop, and then you could give it a file name. So I'm going to call this V28 P11D data. And then if I complete the backup wizard, I now have a full backup of my existing P11D data. So once you've done that, you're then ready to move on and do the installation. But just to recap those 4 steps, make a note of the serial number and key. So click Help and About. You'll see a screen like you're seeing on the slide here. Make a note of those details. Note your data location, maybe copy it into Notepad, run Compact and Repair and back up your data. So it's then time to install the update. To do this, you will need to download the installation file from our online help center. You must be logged onto your computer with administrator access rights. So if you're not sure about that, speak to your IT department, and then you would run the file that you downloaded in order to install version 29. Now, there has been a change to the installation process, and Sage 50 P11D version 29 will automatically install into a new folder, so it will not overwrite any previous versions. And that will make it easier for you to access historical data in previous versions should you need to in the future. And if you try to install over the top of a previous installation, you will be prevented from doing so. So once you've been through the installation and it's installed into that new folder, it will create a new shortcut on your desktop for version 29, and then you're ready to activate version 29 and transfer your data. And those are the steps that I'll show you in the next demo. So bringing these slides down, and I'm just going to minimize version 28. Now I've already completed the installation, and you can see that I have a desktop shortcut. So it's Sage 50 P11D version 29 that you'll be looking for. And when you run this for the first time, you will be prompted to enter your serial number and activation key. So I'm just going to pop my details in and click onto Next. And then you're given 2 options, either to create new data or to upgrade existing data. So if you're starting to use P11D for the first time, you would create new data. Or if you prefer to restore a backup of your version 28 data, you can create new data first, and then you can do a restore. But changes we've made to the installation now makes it possible to upgrade existing data by copying it and transferring it into version 29. So that's the route I'm going to go down. I'm going to choose Upgrade Existing Data and then click onto Next. Now in this box, we will either need to browse to our version 28 data, or we can copy the path into this box. So if I remove the existing path, what I could do is I could bring up my Notepad document and I could paste it in like so. Or alternatively, you would use the browse option and you would browse to your existing P11D MDB file. Now this will often contain a hidden folder, so you will need to make sure that hidden files and folders are shown in Windows. But because I've just copied and pasted like this, I should be able to click onto Next and then click Finish. You can see then it takes us through the P11D upgrade wizard. So just follow the steps. You can view the upgrade log if you wish to. And when I click onto Finish, it tells me the conversion was successful and it needs to recalculate figures for all employees. I'm just going to click OK to that. The recalculation has been completed successfully. And I am then prompted to log in. So if I have a password, I would enter it here. I would then click Login. And as you can see at the top of the screen here, we are in version 29. And I can see my existing employer and employee details transferred across from version 28. So that's the installation complete. To get the download, you can find it from the link in the handout, or alternatively, if you go to our P11D support site, sage.co.uk/P11D support, you can follow the links for year-end 2024, and then download and install version 29. And this is the guide that contains the download and also the step-by-step instructions on how to install and then transfer your data. So if you have this to hand, you shouldn't go far wrong. So let's just recap where we are up to. So you've downloaded and installed version 29. When you run it for the first time, you've been prompted to enter your serial number and activation key, which you can note from version 28. We chose the option to upgrade existing data, but you could create a new company and then restore your backup. Or if you're starting from scratch, just create a new company. And then the next steps it takes you through is upgrading the data and then recalculating the figures. So a quick look at what's new in version 29. So the main change is that the legislation is updated with all of the relevant legislation for 2023 to 24. So that includes the Class 1A national insurance rate, which has returned to 13.8% after all the carry on last year with the increase and then decrease for the national insurance. Company car fuel and company van rates are updated, fuel scale charges, mileage advisory rates, and the statutory reports. So all updated and ready for reporting on tax year 23 to 24. You've seen during the installation process that we've updated that so that you can easily access previous year's data by installing into a new directory. And some good news around email P11Ds. They are now available in standard licenses as well as professional. So we've given you that flexibility to be able to both print and email P11D with all of the P11D software. So you can read more about what's new following the link on screen. Right, so next up, we're going to talk about entering benefit details. And first of all, just to give you an understanding of how the P11D software works, let's take a look at the types of records you'll be keeping in your P11D software. So at the highest level, you would create an employer record. And if you're doing P11D for multiple companies, you would have them all in the same database and they would be set up as separate employers. Attached to each employer, you would have some employees. So you would create employee records, and that contains all of their details. And then attached to the employees, you would create benefit records, recording the taxable benefits and expenses that they have received in the 2023 to 24 tax year. So that, at a very basic level, is how the records are structured in P11D. And then any calculations with regards to things like company cars, beneficial loans, are all done by the software, and it will produce the P11D reports with all of the information categorized appropriately. Now, we're not going to go into a great deal of detail on how to use the P11D software, but I will give you a few examples in the demo. But I just want to point you towards our support site, which I mentioned earlier at sage.co.uk/P11D support. And from there, you should find all the help that you need to get up and running. Now, to give you a bit of a head start, if you use Sage 50 Payroll, it is possible to import information from your payroll into P11D. So this could be done at the point you're setting up for the first time, and also to import any changes since the last time you used your P11D. So from your payroll, you can import employer details. You can import employee details, so any changes of address, etc., or new employees that you've taken on can be brought in. And also company car and fuel records, if you set these up in payroll, or any beneficial loans that you've been deducting as a pay element that is set up to transfer to P11D. Now, you can read all about the import process by following the link there on the handout, but in the demo, we'll give you a quick look at the import, and I'll also show you how to manually create the records directly in P11D. So let me just jump back to the demo, bringing those slides down again. Now, because I transferred my version 28 data, just to give you a look at the layout in P11D, you'll see that I do have an employee list, and I also have a list of employers. In my case, it's just the one. So this employer has all of these employee records attached. And for any of the employees that have benefits, they will have a Y in the benefits column. And if you select an employee, you'll see the benefit details in the pane here at the bottom. So you can then sort of double click those benefits and you can see the existing records within your data. Now, in terms of navigation, you do have a stacked toolbar on the left-hand side. So this is split into a benefits section where you can either view or create new benefit records. You'll see there are various categories of benefit you can record, as well as the miscellaneous benefits, which should contain anything that doesn't have its own category. You've got your employee tasks, where you can deal with employee details, and then you can set up employers and do your employer's declaration from the employer tasks. And then once you're all done, the internet submissions are all handled from that stack there. Now you'll find the very same options from the menu bar at the top. So benefit records, employee options, employer options, and internet submissions. So the way that you navigate is purely down to personal preference. Now, what I want to show you is the import process from payroll. So since I last used P11D last year, I have taken on a new employee who's been set up in my payroll. And I've also created a company car record in payroll for one of my employees that received a company car during the year. So just to show you the company car record, if I just go into an employee record, there's a cars and fuel tab just here at the top. And then you can see I've created a new car. I've entered all the relevant details here. And that was first used kind of midway through the 23 to 24 tax year. So this is the type of information that would be imported to an existing P11D dataset. It will also update any changes that you've made to the employee details in payroll. But it's also a good way to set up from scratch if you're using our P11D software for the first time. Now, one thing you will need to know is your payroll data path if you're going to be importing, and that can be viewed here at the bottom of the screen on the status bar. So my payroll data is in the default location, so I can make a note of this, and then I'll be browsing to that payroll.mdb file as part of the import process. You also need your payroll closed when you do the import, or you need to be logged out of that company at the very least. So I'm going to close down Sage 50 Payroll, and I will now show you how to import records from your payroll software. So it's worth mentioning you should have a backup before you do any import in case you need to undo any of these changes. So I already have a backup. I'm going to go to the File menu. I'll come down to Data Import, and then I'm going to choose this first option, Import Sage Payroll Data. And that then takes you into the Payroll Data Import Wizard. And then when you click onto Next, you'll need to browse to find your Sage Payroll database. So you can search certain drives, but because I know where the data is, I'm going to click onto Browse. I'm going to click Browse again, and I know that my data is in the Company 1 folder within Pay Data, and it's this payroll.mdb file. When I click onto Next, you'll see the employer name and the tax district and reference. So I'll have that selected in the list. And when I click Next again, you'll see the employee records that are set up in payroll. Now you could choose to import all of the employee records by clicking Clear and then Swap so that they're all highlighted. Or you might want to choose individual employees that you want to bring in. I'm just going to go back into that menu. And you would do this by holding the Control key on your keyboard and then simply clicking on the employees that you want to import. So if it was just the last 3, 8, 9, and 10, I could select them like so. Or if I click onto Clear, that's going to import everyone. So I'm going to choose to import everyone. I'm going to click onto Next. It's detected that this employer already exists in P11D. And we're going to click Yes to update this employer. And then you'll see a progress bar that moves across. This can take a bit of time depending on how much payroll data you have. And then you should get this screen that your payroll data import is complete. So if I click Finish, I then get an import log. So you can see as part of this information, I do have an employee created, employee 10. I have a new car record created, as well as existing records being updated. So you could print that out if you want to. I'm just going to click OK. It'll then recalculate any imported benefits, and then that will be completed successfully. So I don't want to import more payroll data, I just have the one company. As you can see there, it has created that new record for employee 10, like so. And for employee 4, it has brought in the company car record, which I could view by double clicking in the benefits pane. So that might save you a bit of time when it comes to updating information, particularly if you use payroll, or only if you use payroll, but if you use company cars in payroll as well. But I do want to briefly show you the process for entering benefit records in P11D directly. So I'm just going to pick my new employee. So that was employee 10 in this list. And I'm going to add a company car record, just to show you how it's done in P11D, and we'll also add some medical insurance. So once you've selected the employee from the main list, you can either choose the benefit type from the stack toolbar, or you can go to benefits at the top. In my case, I'm going to choose company cars. You would then complete the relevant information. So anything blue is a mandatory field. So I'm just going to pop some details in now. So the date the car was registered, the date it was available, so when this was provided to your employee. And if it's less than the full tax year, it just means that the P11D cost for the car can be adjusted accordingly. I'm then going to enter the benefit details. So in this case, it includes the engine size and the fuel for the car. So make sure you choose the correct fuel type based on the car that you are setting up. For me, it's just petrol. I've got our CO2 emissions and the list price. And there is a box to indicate if private fuel is also provided to work out the fuel scale charge. But in this case, I'm not going to tick that box. It's just the company car. They pay for their own private fuel. So I have enough details there to save this record. So I'm going to go ahead and click on to save. I can then see it's worked out the P11D cost for the car, and also the section of the P11D report that will show on. You can also switch to the P11D view, just at the bottom of the screen, and you can see how it's starting to build up this form, showing the details of the taxable benefits we've provided to that particular employee. So I'm going to set up another benefit type for this employee. So let's enter some medical insurance. So I'll use the stacked toolbar this time. Click in medical insurance. We will enter the commencement date. So again, for this one, it was after the start of the tax year, which means that it will adjust the P11D cost based on the number of days in the tax year that this benefit was available. So I've put the annual premium in. There's no employee contributions or amounts PAYE'd. We could leave some notes as well, which would appear on reports if they're public notes. And I'm just going to go ahead and click on to save. And you can see that's added a medical insurance benefit record. And like before, if you go to the P11D view, I scroll on to the next page, it's then got that value in the relevant section. So that is just a very quick look at how you would record information in the P11D software. This is the bit that's going to take you the most time. So you have got plenty of time until those submission deadlines. But as a reminder, you can import certain details from payroll if you wish to. Employer details, employee details, company car and fuel records, and beneficial loans. And then it's a case of entering any other types of benefits directly into P11D, as I have just shown you. So once that's all been done, it's then time to start thinking about the year-end process. So for this part of the webinar, I am going to take you through the process, including the submission to HMRC. And we'll start with a quick overview of what's involved. So on this process map, we've got a little bit of preparation to begin with. So first of all, we're going to check our version and make sure that we're using version 29 for tax year 2023 to 24. You'll then need to check the benefit details that have been entered into the software. So I'm going to show you some handy reports that you could run for that. We recommend that you take a backup once you've completed all of those checks so that you've got a safe and secure copy of your payroll data. And then for the year end itself, you produce your P11D reports, which will be submitted to HMRC electronically, but you will be producing a copy for your employees. You'll do your employer declaration. And then once you've done that and you're happy with everything you've checked, you would then submit your P11D by the deadline. And as a reminder, that was the 6th of July for the deadline to submit to HMRC. And it must be done online. You can no longer do paper returns. They were abolished with effect from last year. So for the next demo, we're going to run through the year-end process. Let's bring the slides down as before. And we'll start with that little bit of preparation. So checking the version number is really simple. It appears in the top part of the screen here, version 29, and the tax year you'll find in the opposite corner. So that should be reading 2023 to 24. We then recommend that you recalculate your benefits. So to do this, you select the employer that you're dealing with, go to the employer menu, down to update employer calculations, and then click recalculate benefits. You should get this nice message that your figures are all up to date. And then you can review the benefit details by running benefit reports. So if I click onto clear and swap, that's highlighted everyone in my list. So some of these do have benefits, others don't. I will go into the reports icon here at the top of the screen, and you'll find that there are a series of reports for each benefit type. So I've been dealing with company car benefit and medical benefit. So these types of reports are the ones that I might run. I've got a company car benefit report, which gives you all the details of the cars that have been set up for your employees. And the other one I had was medical insurance reports. So again, gives you all the relevant information here. There are also a series of employer reports that you might want to look into. So have a view through these. You've got P11D summaries, if you want to see all the P11D information on kind of one report. And then when it comes to producing the P11Ds themselves, you'll find that they are also within the report section, but I will come back to that in a few moments' time. So you would need to check that all benefits provided in the tax year have been recorded. And if you're happy with all of those amounts, we then suggest you take a backup. So as a reminder, backups are done from the File menu and then Backup. Work through your backup wizard, backing up the data files. And then you can click onto Browse as we did before and give your backup a file name. So I've called it version 29 P11D year end. And then that's a bit of a safety net. That's a point we could restore back to should we need to. So that's our preparation done. Next steps are to produce the P11D reports. So I'm going to take you back to where I was before. I click clear and swap and go into the reports option. In the employee reports, if you scroll down, you'll find a couple of different P11D options. So there's the one designed to be printed, P11D 2023 to 2024, and we also have the email version. So let's have a look at the printed one. I'm going to select it and click preview so that you can see the reports on screen, and that will then give you a preview of everyone's P11D. As I say, it's only for employees that have benefit records set up. It's designed to be printed onto plain paper, so there's no stationery needed or anything like that. It will print all of the background and the boxes, etc. And you can start to see the detail. We've got a company car on that one, got another company car on the next one. Then I think we've got some medical benefits as well for some of our employees. So to print it out, you can use the print option at the top. And if you would like a copy for yourself, maybe a PDF copy, you've got this export option at the top of the preview. So you could export it. I'm going to drop it onto my desktop. I'll call it P11D 2024. And that is my copy to refer back to if I need to. So that's the printed report. For the email P11Ds, it'll integrate with Microsoft Outlook and it will create emails with the P11D attached. And those forms will be password protected by the employee's national insurance number. So if you're going to be emailing, you will need an email address entered in the employee details in the employee record. So you'd select the email layout and you would click this email button in order to produce them. So I do have one that I created earlier. So it drops it into the drafts folder usually in Outlook. So this is a P11D attached to an email. And if I try to open it, just before I send it, you can see that it is password protected. And I would need to put that employee's NI number in order to then access the copy of the form. So that's how it would work. And you would send that to the employee. So I'll pick up their email address and that's how they would receive their form. But you can read more about emailing the P11Ds from our support guide. So that's the employee's copy dealt with. What we now need to do is our employer declaration. So to get to this, you can click the employer stack toolbar on the left-hand side, or you can go to the employer menu from the top of the screen. And then you'll need to find employer's declaration. So it's this option just here, or employer's declaration here on the left-hand side. And on the declaration tab, you'll just tick the box to confirm that the details of expenses, benefits, and payments are included with the declaration. And you can type in the capacity in which your declaration is signed. So I'm going to put managing director. Now there is also an adjustment section, and this is also a good place to view the Class 1A national insurance contributions that you will need to pay. So you can see the adjustments tab allows you to make adjustments where required, but usually it will just calculate from the benefit details you've entered. It multiplies by the employer's percentage for the Class 1A national insurance, and it shows you your total amount due. So you can save that declaration and you can print it directly from here if you want your own printed copy. Or if you want to save it as a PDF, which is my preferred option, once you've saved the employer declaration, go into reports and then employer, and you've got the declaration just here, which looks something like this. And then you could export this so that you've got your copy of the P11DB. Now, previously, this could have been sent in the post, but it is now submitted exclusively online. So don't return that form to the address shown. This is just for your records. And we'll be doing the submission in the next part of the webinar. Something else you could do at this point is to check your Class 1A breakdowns by employee or as a summary. So we've got some recommended reports documented in our support guides. So now that we've completed the declaration, our final step is to send this information to HMRC. So to do this, you would go to your Internet Submissions options here on the left-hand side. And if this is the first time you've submitted from P11D, so you didn't do it last year, for example, you might be a new user, you can go into your e-submission settings here at the top, and then you can enter the relevant details. So I'm going to put my credentials in now. You would put some contact details and an email address. And if you save these settings, it just means that you won't need to type them in again at the point you make a submission. Now, some of you might have multiple employers set up and you might use different user IDs and passwords for some of them. And if that is the case, you should enter one set of credentials here. But then when you're submitting the P11Ds for other employers that have different details, you can overwrite them as part of the submission. So my details are now entered. I can then move on to the step to submit the P11D by clicking on this icon here. It does recommend that we've backed up before we do this. And I've already taken my backup, so I'm going to click no. And then you'll see a list of employers if you have more than one. and it should say can submit yes, because we've done our P11DB. Once that's selected, you click on to continue, and that will then take you into the submission screen. So this will look familiar if you use payroll. So you would click on to continue. This is where you can check and, if required, change your user ID and password details. Got more than one set that you're using. It'll then give you a summary of the employees included, NIC, and then to send it to HMRC, you'd go ahead and click submit. So you'll see the progress bar move across, much like this. And once it's been received, you should say, get confirmation that the submission has been successful. So you can view the submission log from here or using this option on the left-hand side. And that is it done. We've now submitted our P11D and P11DB for that employer. And we can even now, if we want to, use the brand new P11D viewer here on the left-hand side to view the contents of that submission. So they can be viewed on screen, a bit like the FPS viewer if you use Sage 50 Payroll. And that information can be printed or exported to Excel if you need to do any kind of analysis on that after the event. So a good way of keeping an audit trail of what exactly was sent in that submission. So yeah, that's it done. And we're just going to recap that and then give you a little bit of additional information on submission errors and corrections. So that there was the process that we've just been through, checking the version, checking the benefit details and backing up, then producing the P11D and P11DB and submitting to HMRC. So on the handout, you can see there just a screenshot of a P11D form. It can be printed or emailed. So if you follow the links on the handouts here, you'll be able to read more about both methods. And then when it comes to the employer declaration, you would complete that, filling in the relevant details. You can check your Class 1A on the Adjustments tab and also by running Class 1A reports. And if you're happy with everything, and it's important to be sure that you're happy to submit, you would then move on to the internet submission. So first of all, if you haven't already done so, you can save your login details in the e-submission settings. And then once you've done the submission, you've got the option of viewing the submission log if you didn't print it at the time. And we've got that brand new P11D viewer if you want to get drilled down into the detail of what was sent. Now, I did mention submission errors. There is one common error. So this is the one that we see in kind of 95% plus of failures. It's error 1046, authentication failure. And common causes of that error are that you're using the incorrect user ID or password, or the incorrect tax district and reference, aka employer PAYE reference. So if you are getting error 1046, it's worth checking those details. You can read our full guide on other causes and troubleshooting of that error on the first link on this slide. And for any other error that might come up on a submission, you can view our other support guide, which will give you steps to resolve those as well. So hopefully it won't happen if it's that common one. It's probably your user ID or password or the PAYE reference. And just to end with a quick note on P11D corrections. So since last April, all P11Ds must be submitted online, and that goes for corrections as well. Now with our P11D software, you can only make one submission per PAYE reference per tax year in P11D. So once you've sent it, if you need to correct anything, you will need to do that via HMRC's PAYE online service. So we suggest that you correct the records in P11D and then reprint the relevant reports. So the P11D reports for the affected employees and the P11DB. And then you can log on to PAYE online in a browser and you can submit the corrections that way. So we've got some guidance following the link on the slide. So that has brought us to the end of the content. We are slightly over time and I appreciate you may still have questions. So we're going to keep the webinar open a little while longer to give you a chance to read through the questions and answers, copy and paste anything that you want to keep, and also to submit any final questions, which I suggest you do in the next couple of minutes. I just want to mention some of the further support that's available. So I mentioned our P11D support hub. So in your browser, in the address bar, go to sage.co.uk/P11D support, or in Sage 50 P11D. If you click the little Sage icon above your employee list, that will open the support site in your browser as well. So from there, you can search keywords in our knowledge base, or you can read the support guides. So a great place to look this time of year is the P11D year end for 2024. If you're still stuck and you need to contact our support team, you will also find all the contact details on our help centre. So do check that out. That's your one-stop shop for all things P11D. So the rest of the time that we'll keep the webinar open will be just for the questions. So that will all take place in the Q&A panel over there on the right-hand side. If you haven't got a copy of the handout already and you want to download them, please click onto the piece of paper icon and grab your copy of the handout from there. And a reminder for the Q&A, you will need to copy and paste into another document if you want to keep any of the questions and answers, as you will not be able to download them. Now, for those of you that are leaving now, please be aware that you will be invited to complete our exit survey, and it would be really helpful to know what you thought of the session today. And if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to complete the survey as you leave, we do read all of your comments, and it helps us to improve our sessions moving forward. So look out for that when you exit the webinar, and also look out for a follow-up email where we will attach a copy of the recording. Well, it'll be a link, sorry, to the recording. There'll be a watch recording link at the bottom of the follow-up email. That should be arriving with you later on this afternoon. So keep an eye on your inbox for that. Now, I'm going to go on to mute just to have a look at how the questions are going. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. I will come back in a few minutes when we are ready to wrap things up. So I will speak to you soon. So hello again, everyone, and thanks for sticking around until the very end there. It looks like we have managed to answer the majority of questions there in the chat, so it's been quite a busy session. So apologies if we didn't get round to yours. We are going to wrap things up at this point though, so just a reminder to complete the exit survey if you wouldn't mind as you leave the webinar, and do look out for that follow-up email. It's arriving usually a few hours after the webinar ends, and it will include that link to watch the recording of the session should you wish to do so. But on behalf of myself and the team here on the webinar, thanks so much for joining us, and we will maybe see you on another one of our webinars at some point in the future. So goodbye for now.